Hello Internet, welcome back to our tutorial playthrough. I think in this episode we're going to go out of the base, we're going to forage a little bit and talk about foraging in the game. And maybe going to talk a little bit about how I'm getting disappointed in the way the series is going. So you'll see we're hungry and we're thirsty, and we've talked about the hunger system in Cataclysm, and we know that we're overweight, which we can see in the at menu. Oh yeah, I said I was going to make an episode about the at menu. Okay, well maybe we'll do that instead this episode. So let's talk about the at menu. This is accessed by pressing the at key, which is Shift 2 on the standard American keyboard. It's that symbol that appears in your email address, such and such at, I don't know, AOL.com. Remember AOL? That was a thing that happened. And we access this. This is the player menu, and it gives us a lot of information about our character. First, we have our stats, which are pretty self-explanatory. You can hover over these items to get an information about that particular highlighted option. So we talked about our stats a little bit in our character creation series, but here we actually see not only our current. So I believe that current is, I don't know which is which. One is current and one is total. So you'll see we have 12 strength, and in parentheses, we have 12 strength. If we were in pain and that reduced our stats, it would change these numbers. Some of them would appear in red, I believe. They certainly do appear in red in the upper right corner of our sidebar. And one number will be lower than the other. And what that represents is that the high number is the number that is our actual value. And then the lower number is the value that it currently is due to various effects on our person. So currently, all of our stats are the same. So we can hover over each one using the arrow keys here. You can also use the numpad as you would to move in the game. And it tells you information. It gives you the blurb about what this particular attribute does, as well as what it's doing currently. So currently, with 12 strength, we have 96 HP. Now, we can't see that currently. There is a trait that you can get called self-aware that will reveal exact numbers instead of these bars representing our hit points. But we don't have that, and so we can look here to see, okay, well, max HP is 96, and that applies to every single limb. It has a maximum HP of 96, which is pretty good, frankly. Most people don't have 12 strength. Most players play like 10, 11, strength, but I always bump up strength as much as possible. Also lists what our current carrying weight capacity is, and this melee damage is, I believe, a bonus to our melee damage. Next, we have dexterity, and you'll see it displays that same information. And so if these stats are reduced, you can quickly look at them and see how much is being affected, I believe. So currently, read times take 100% of time, and we have a crafting bonus, which I believe is a speed bonus of 8%. I'm not sure. Actually, I don't know if that's what that means. It may mean experience bonus from crafting is 8%. I actually don't know what that one means. But anyway, you can hover over all these things by using your arrow keys, and then weight as well is what we were talking about. And here it says we put on a few extra pounds, nothing too excessive, but it's starting to impact your health and waistline a bit. Not a concern. Don't worry about overweight. Normal, overweight, and underweight are not a big deal. It's when you start to get beyond that. Let's instead of foraging and talking about food and whatnot, let's just continue looking in the app menu. You'll see at the top we also have our current name, our gender, and then usually there is a line here that says what your profession is. So it would normally say like male backpacker, right? But it doesn't say that because we're just the stock standard survivor. Or else that was removed. I don't think it was removed. So normally it will say also your profession, although it's not really relevant. In fact, those entries mean nothing. They're just your character flavor stuff. Next, we have a tab. You can move between these tabs by using tab and back tab. Or again, if you've bound them to the greater than, less than symbols, you can do that as well. We have not talked about encumbrance and warmth. These are things that are contributed from the clothing and armor that we're wearing, as well as the ambient temperature around us. So we have all of our body parts here. There are items, I believe. I'm not sure why the hands are listed separately. I guess there are hand items that only occupy one hand. But here we can quickly see our encumbrance, which is this value right here, and our warmth, which is the values over here. And these are color coded. So yellow is like, hey, we're approaching some dangerous situation. Green is acceptable. And then white is also, I guess, just like close to neutral. I'm not sure which direction they color code. But we haven't talked about encumbrance and warmth. We definitely will probably once we start talking about clothing and armor. At the moment, we're in springtime, we're wearing clothing, we're not going to freeze to death, we're not going to get so hot that we die. So you'll see also over here that we're listed as warm, and it tells us which body parts are warm, which would be our torso, our arms, and our feet are going to be getting warm. So over time, these will start to show up. Currently, our arms are not listed as warm, and I'm guessing that's because we're right at the threshold of around 40 would be my guess. We'll talk about this as we get there. Next, we can't actually select this. Also, you can select those body parts using the arrow keys as well, and it will tell you the explicit information about what is happening. So we have 26 encumbrance on our torso, and it tells us that gives us a negative 26% to hit with our attack rolls, as well as our dodge skill. It increases the amount of movement it costs to swim, as well as penalizing our melee and thrown attacks speed. And so you can hover over body parts here, and it will tell you what is affecting those particular body parts and what impact that has on your actual gameplay. Again, these are things that we will cover later on. The next tab we can't actually tab to. You'll see it jumps down to our skills tab. This is just our speed listing. This is going to show everything that's currently impacting your character's speed. So our base movement cost at the moment to move from one tile to the next is 109 moves, which is slightly over one turn, which is 100 moves, and it's about a second. So 109 is about a second. Current speed is actually 96, so we're actually a little bit slower. We're slower? I don't know. Current speed, I think, means that we're moving at 96 moves per turn. No, wait a minute. I believe that 96 is bad, that we are slower than we normally would be. I think speed of 100 is baseline, and then we can also see that thirst is slowing us down by 2% because we are thirsty. Not 100% on those values. Don't really look at this screen very often, but I believe that 96 means we're slower than we normally would be, and that is bad, as well as being slower due to thirst. The main impact of speed is going to be pain. Pain will significantly reduce your speed over time, and I believe also that having low stamina will increase the amount of the time it takes you to move around. The next menu that we have access to, the tab we have access to, is our skills list. We've been looking at this pretty frequently. You can hover over each individual skill, and it will give you a description of what the skill is used for. So what we're looking at here, they are broken down into categories. So first we have crafting skills, interaction skills, melee skills, and range skills. If, like me, you're using a large font, this will not display every skill. So if you scroll down, it will reveal the remaining skills at the bottom. So they're broken down by category, and then inside of the category, they're organized by alphabetical order. You will see the skill name followed by your current level in the skill. So we have a 0 in cooking, followed by a parentheses that show you what percentage of progress you've made to the next skill level. So for cooking, we've never cooked anything. So we have a 0 skill, and we're 0% of the way to level 1. For fabrication, we currently have 2. We're level 2 fabrication, and we've crafted enough that we have 7% of the way to fabrication level 3. You'll refer to this occasionally just to see where you are with your skills and such, and how close you are and how much crafting you need to do. For the most part, this is just a look at menu. It's not something you need to highlight an individual thing. For torso encumbrance and stuff, you are going to occasionally want to hover over a specific body part to see the impact. This is not one you really have to hover over. You can just at a glance, and 90% of the time you're going to be looking at your crafting skills anyway, which are the first thing in the list. So not super complicated. Next, we have the traits menu. Now, traits are we took these particular traits at our character creation Traits vary wildly in what they do, and so it's very important that if you get a trait that you don't know what it is, you tab over to this menu and hover over it, and it will tell you precisely what that trait does. Now, some traits are not obvious in what they do. It'll say, oh, this helps prevent you from being wet when outside, but it won't give you an actual value of what that translates to in like a min-max representation. You will mostly get traits when you start the game, and then as you get mutations, they will appear in the trait menu as well. And we'll talk about mutation much later in the game. It's not really something you experience generally in the early game, so it's something you don't have to worry about for a while. Most of the time, when you're first starting out, if you're a new player, you're just going to get the traits that you start with at character generation, and you're probably never going to get any other ones. Next tab, we have the Bionics menu. Currently, we have no Bionics, so I can't really show you anything. But this is the Bionics menu. It will display all Bionics that are currently in your body that you have access to, and it shows your Bionic power. I don't often use this. I usually use the Bionic menu itself because it's a little bit more straightforward, and I don't have to tab around and whatnot. It's all laid out in a list. We'll talk about that as we proceed to Bionics. And then finally, we have the Effects tab. This is an important tab as well, and it's important to tab over these items. So the effects just show everything that's currently affecting your character. You'll see we are unhappy, which if we look in the morale menu, you'll see that we're hot, so we're actually unhappy. We're at -3 morale, which we'll talk about morale when we get there. Man, this is like always, there's so much to talk about, and I feel like I'm doing a very poor job at breaking it down. It's important to tab over things. Here you can see that we're warm and our torso feels warm. And what it says is constant pain. And I believe what that means is that over time we will gradually accumulate pain due to being hot. I don't know if that's true. I didn't think warm caused pain. And if we go down to slow down, you'll see that our torso is so hot that we're actually having our speed reduced. So that's why we were getting... why we're getting this speed reduction of -2. It's one of the things that's contributing to our loss of speed. So it's important to tab over them. There are many effects in the game. They're kind of broken down into categories. Like the ones we have currently are mostly temperature related. I would say that is a category of effects. There are lots of other effects, things like you getting bleeding. Bleeding is a pretty common status effect. I would say deep bites, I believe, show up here. Infections and recovering from infections will show up here. Getting blinded will show up here. There's lots of stuff. Being deaf, there's lots of effects in Cataclysm. And if you're not familiar with them, tab over here and just move your arrow keys over it so that you can get a description of it and understand. Now, there will also be other information, like if we get poisoned, it will say something like pain, but then it will also say I think what does it say? It's not constant. It's there'll be another thing here. I can't think of what it's called, and it will say like damage or rare. I think is what it says, rare damage. And what that means is that every time it rolls to check, you might get pain or you might actually take damage to the body part that's affected by it. So looking at a specific effect is important because it will tell you that kind of stuff as to what to expect from this particular damage or this particular effect. So it's really important that you check that menu. Again, mostly I use it for reference. I will take a quick glance at my skills from time to time. This is a good menu to look at encumbrance and warmth. It's a little tedious to go through individual body parts in the wearing menu, in the clothing menu. So I do prefer to look at the at menu just to quickly get an idea of what my encumbrance is. Again, we'll talk about that more as we go. I don't often look at my speed because there's not a lot you can do about it, so it doesn't really matter what your speed currently is because there's not much you can do to remedy that. Plus it displays your basic speed here as well as the previous movement's unit cost in order to move. Or I guess they call them units. I mean, move is 100 turn is move. Okay, a turn is 100 moves, and this would be measured in moves. So I don't know how to describe that. It's the unit they use to measure movement. Anyway, just more example of why I don't like this series so far. Okay, so we talked about the character menu. That should probably be a standalone episode just for organization's sake. So I think that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.